Speaking of Manchester United, Wayne Rooney talking about his now former club. Interesting quotes here. There are standards that you have to keep when you're at Manchester United. That came from the manager, Sir Alex Ferguson, when I went to United. And it was then passed down through the dressing room by the likes of Giggsy, Gary Neville, and Scholesy. Wayne Rooney went on. Over the last few years, it was down to me and Michael Carrick to keep the new players maintaining those standards. That became more difficult over the last few years with some of the players who joined the club, end quote. Interesting stuff there. For more, let's go back out to Los Angeles with Dan Thomas and Craig Burley.
Thanks, Sebby. Here we are then at Montage Beverly Hills, the Manchester United Hotel. Mr. Craig Burley is with us. It's not a bad life, is it, Craig? If you're a Manchester United player and you're seeing those quotes from Wayne Rooney, how are you feeling?
I think you just get over it, or you man up. I mean, what he's saying is, to me, is that the characters in the club from the heyday and when he was there as a youngster first coming in are not there anymore. We have to understand, when he came into the club, the Pallisters, the Bruces had been there, the Schmeichel, Roy Keane was dragging people around the dressing room, demanding they were doing the job. And as those players left, you know, Gary Neville, Paul Scholes, as those players started to filter out, I suppose Ryan Giggs would be in there as well, although he wouldn't give you the opinion that he's a very aggressive person, but I'm sure in the dressing room he would have his say. And I think as Man United have changed since the Ferguson era was over, the players that have come in, one, have been nowhere near as good on the field, but two, clearly, in my opinion, is a different type of footballer, far more weaker in terms of their mentality and not being able to take the criticism as well, and also not seemingly as big a characters in the dressing room.
But you've got Rooney, who hasn't performed for a good 18 months on the pitch, coming out and saying it's like, oh yeah, me and Carrick did all the work, and
well, I think
when he didn't.
No, I think what he's saying is we had to do the work in the dressing room. We had to G the boys up. We maybe had to call a few boys out, but he probably didn't have to do that as much before, and that was a role he had to take on. Look, we can't argue his legs and his performance is diminished. There's absolutely not a shadow of a doubt about that. But you can't argue that the character and quality of the players that have come into United in recent years have been nowhere near the standard of the previous guys, or indeed had the presence around the dressing room. And that's going to be a big factor going forward. I think that's as big an issue, almost in terms of the performances, as some of the players and the technique and the quality. Because it's almost like at Old Trafford, when things are not going so well, all of a sudden a few start hiding. When you never got that before, a couple of bad results, they dusted themselves down, and then they carried on.
Let's go back out to Gab for a quick minute, because this is not the first time we've seen Juventus and AC Milan do business. Some big name players have played for both clubs. You see this in other countries, but Gab, maybe not as much as between these two teams. And some of these moves have really ended or started eras with one club or another. Why is there so much back and forth here?
Well, look, I mean, every story is very much different between these two. It's interesting looking at that list. There aren't too many that have actually done really well at both clubs. The obvious examples, I think, are Andrea Pirlo, and again, in his case, it was very much a case of Milan no longer believing in him. And in the opposite direction, of course, Pippo Inzaghi scored plenty of goals for Juve. Juve believing that they need David Trezeguet was a better option, and then he goes to Milan and keeps scoring. But I think part of it is at club level, you don't necessarily have the nasty rivalry between these two teams that you might have, say, between Roma and Juventus or Fiorentina and Juventus. And in fact, you might recall back in, I think it was 2006, when Kaká, of all people, injured Gigi Buffon in a pre-season friendly, leaving Juventus without a goalkeeper. Milan actually loaned them. Cristian Abbiati at the time was their reserve goalkeeper for the season to sort of make up for it. So relations between the two historically haven't been that bad at ownership level.
Gab, who are we kidding here? You're a Milan fan and you hate Juventus. Don't give me this nonsense that everything is gravy between Juventus and AC Milan. Come on now.
When did I become a Milan fan?
Oh, you're not a Milan fan?
Narratives you put in your head. But, no, I was not a Milan fan as a kid. No.
Inter?
But
I'm going to get it right.
I mean, I think if you Yeah, you keep going. But I think, and then we see this happen. We've seen it, obviously, Bayern Munich loaning money to Borussia Dortmund to stop them going bankrupt in the past. We certainly we saw it after the Munich air disaster with Manchester United and Manchester City. So I think throughout the course of history there are fierce rivalries, but there are also situations where with a lot of clubs where they say, you know what, let's work together and we'll see who gets the upper hand.
And some confusing quotes from Jose Mourinho. I think after the champions, Chelsea, I think Manchester United is the second most successful club last season and Arsenal the third. For me, that's absolutely clear. To finish second, third, or fourth is like being first, second, and third of the last because there's only one winner. Arsenal won a competition. We won 2.5, I like to say. If someone had to prove something this season, it is the ones that won nothing. So they have to improve to win something. One, do we understand what Mourinho's saying? And two, do we agree with it? Ale?
This is crazy talk. But it's very much along the lines of Jose Mourinho and what he has laid out in years past. The fact that he's talking about winning Europa League as a big achievement for Manchester United tells you how low the bar had been put for Manchester United, where that is the way that they get into Champions League. Look, there's no question that other teams, whether they won competitions or not, whether it's Manchester City or Arsenal, whoever the case may be, it doesn't mean that validates whatever Manchester United did or didn't do. This is one thing has nothing to do with the other. This is crazy talk.
Yeah, I think that's the interesting point. I think if you looked at a team like Tottenham, who had a successful season in all accounts, finishing second, but didn't win anything. So do you go and do you say, okay, would Tottenham have rather won the Europa League and finished, say, third, or were they happy with second? Now, I agree with you that it's a big deflection from Jose Mourinho, kind of saying, look, we finished fifth, we had a poor campaign, but look, we won these competitions.
There is a reason why you were in those competitions to begin with. That's because you have failed in the past to achieve your objectives.
It almost feels like he's intentionally lowering the bar at a place where you don't need to be lowering the bar.
No,
I mean, it's
second.
Manchester United.
Hold on a second.
There's that
Break
too.
your arm.
There's a little more of that.
Number one, any chance he gets to pat himself on the back.
Yep.
Number two, he's trying to convince every man and his dog how great they were last season. I mean, he couldn't care less if Arsenal were third. And by the way, how was Arsenal third?
That's why I don't get any
their
of
only
this.
goal was to get the top four, and they didn't do it. Never mind anything else. Listen, Jose is an absolute expert at giving himself and his team, wherever he may be, praise when you least expect it, and somehow convince the masses that he's correct.
Gab, what do you make of the Mourinho quotes?
I struggle with this because I'm the person who stuck up for him, saying that they were unlucky last season and could have easily finished third or fourth. And that I judge by performance beyond results. And then he comes out with his nonsense about winning the Europa League and whatnot. And that means they've won 2.5 trophies. I give up. I don't know what to say. And I did stick up for him all season long.
Gab, you mentioned the quotes from Alexis Sanchez. Let's give them to you here. The decision isn't only mine, speaking out his future at Arsenal. I already made a decision. Now I'm waiting for Arsenal to reply and tell me what they want. He was questioned then, and what decision do you want to make? Sanchez says the idea is playing in the Champions League and winning it. It's a dream I have since I was a kid. Gab, does this shed any more light on where Sanchez might end up for you?
If you take all of this at face value, it's really very simple. The guy wants to win the Champions League. Arsenal will not be winning the Champions League next year because they won't be playing in it. Therefore, he's going to go and go to Arsenal and say, hey, are you going to let me leave? That is, if you take this at face value. I think what's clear is that Alexis Sanchez is obviously ambitious. The clock is ticking. He's 28 years old. Either Arsenal somehow convince him that they're going to put pieces around him so they can win the Premier League this season and go into next year's Champions League as real contenders, in which case he'll extend his deal. Or you think he's going to sit and bide his time and let his contract run down unless they choose to sell him. And if they choose to sell him, we get into a really tough spot because they're going to be reluctant to sell him to a rival, although they did that before with Robin van Persie. But then, you're looking at City, you're looking at Chelsea, you're kind of looking at the usual suspects.
Yeah, Marcotti, let's get the latest transfer talk in, and we'll begin with Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. Sounds like Borussia Dortmund's CEO has come out and said, we're only going to wait a few more days to resolve this thing. How do you think it plays out?
Yeah, the thing is, it's really out of Hans-Joachim Watzke's control here because, he can go and he can set deadlines, but then after that, what's he going to do if Aubameyang demands a move or if a suitable offer comes in? These deadlines, they're all part and parcel of negotiations. I wouldn't pay too much attention to that. Milan certainly were looking at him long and hard, although they've reportedly looking after Morata rather than Aubameyang, who of course started his career at Milan. Chelsea are the other club who obviously everybody knows are looking for a centre forward, and certainly he remains an alternative, but also in the mix, as we said, are Alvaro Morata's again and Torino's Andrea Belotti.
Guys, this situation with Aubameyang is just weird. How do we explain how he's gone from seemingly being one of the biggest targets of the summer to now not really being able to find a home? What do you think, Steve?
It's a complete head scratcher. Gab's talking in terms of, teams don't want to pay what Borussia are asking. And you look around and see what's going on now. You got a fullback going for 50 million. You got Lukaku at 75 million. I would have Aubameyang in my team before Lukaku. And he goes for £75 million, but yet nobody wants Aubameyang. It's a complete head scratcher. The guy has gone from the top of the tree to almost in a place where, we'll see what's going on, and if we're still struggling, we'll go and get this guy. For a guy that scores that many goals, head scratcher.
And has done it for years now, and a progression. It's not as if you said there's the 1 year and, it kind of fell off there. No, he progressively has gotten better, scored more goals. For a club like Borussia Dortmund, Champions League, to your point, it's surprising. Now, even if it was somebody throws an offer of 40, 50 million out there, sees what Dortmund does, but right now it doesn't look like anybody's that interested.
But it just feels like after he was supposed to be going to PSG, it was supposed to be done. And then once PSG backed out, it feels as if everybody else said, hold on a second, what do they know that we don't know? What's happening here that we're not certain about? You don't just go from leading the Bundesliga and being a hot property in the market to now being a lukewarm afterthought. And that's exactly what Aubameyang is. And so I understand that he might have not been a first priority, but it doesn't feel like now he's a priority at all to any of these teams because Chelsea needs a forward, and they don't seem to be the ones that are going right after Aubameyang and saying, we'll pay anything for you. Right now, there are things that we don't know, information that we're not privy to that maybe are influencing the decision.
But on the nice side of it is, he's at Borussia Dortmund.
Right.
I mean, he's not at a small Bundesliga team. He is at a very big club, and if it doesn't work out this summer, if I was him, I'd just be quiet. You're at a big club. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, just tear it up one more year and hope that interest comes.
Let's get Gab in. Gab, what's your take on all this? What's going on with Aubameyang?
Yeah, I think that there's two factors here. One is that, and this is just sheer dumb luck from Aubameyang, most of the teams that this summer are looking for center forwards, and that applies to United, Chelsea, certainly, we're looking for lead the line, target men type center forwards, and that's not his game. And I think given sort of the power that managers have these days, where they're paid so much money and they're given so much control that they say, no, I want this specific type of center forward. They don't want to overhaul their team to accommodate an Aubameyang. And I think at the same time, there's also an issue where I think maybe some of his people played it a little bit wrong. And in the case of Chelsea, I think Chelsea just are still sitting there saying, you know what, there might be other options. If we want an Aubameyang type, maybe Alexis Sanchez becomes viable, given given some of his quotes back in Chile. So they're kind of sitting there working on multiple fronts, and they're pretty confident that they can bring in the right deal at the right price.
Alvaro Morata coming off a successful season at Real Madrid, at least if you go by trophies won. 14 goals in 26 games played, but didn't get the playing time he wanted, now seeking a move somewhere else. Gab Marcotti, Morata has been linked to pretty much everybody in Europe, but the latest link is an interesting one. AC Milan, you buying this as a potential destination for the Spaniard?
Well, we've kind of been here before in some ways. If you remember, Seb, I think it was back in May. There was a suggestion that they had even agreed terms, personal terms, that is. A lot of this is to do with the fact that Alvaro Morata's fiance, who I believe may now be his wife, is Italian. Obviously, he lived in Italy before. When he was at Juventus, Morata later came out, poured cold water on this, said, look, I could never join Milan given that my Juventus past. But now the story is resurfacing in a very big way. Italian papers on Monday saying that Morata's given the green light to joining Milan if, and of course it's a substantial if, they can work out a deal with Real Madrid. Real Madrid, you recall, has been holding out for 90 million euros. They say Milan believe that with something like 70 million, they have a shot at getting Morata.
Gab, let's go with a hypothetical here and say that AC Milan does indeed sign Alvaro Morata as we take a look at their expenditures so far this summer, totaling well over 200 million euros. With all the players that they have now brought in, are they a legit Serie A title contender? Is this the year that the reign for Juventus finally ends? And will it be at the hands of AC Milan?
Well, you're asking me two different things there. Can they be contenders? Yes. Will this be the year that Juve lose the title? I don't know. I mean, it's been 6 in a row. Winning 7 would be nuts, in my opinion. But certainly, Milan would be a lot closer. The one thing I think, in terms of talent, they may be able to challenge. But the difficult thing is you're talking about something like 8, 9 new signings for Vincenzo Montella to fit into a workable starting 11. That's going to be a really, really big challenge, I think.
All right, guys. Let's say Milan, let's keep the hypothetical. They do land Alvaro Morata. Are they legit title contenders against Juventus?
I don't see it that way this season, simply because it's essentially a brand new team. When you're thinking about 8, 9 players that are going to come in and now they have to find a role, they have to find a place on the field, you have to fit these pieces together, it has to work on the field, and it has to happen very quickly. Meantime, Juventus is all set and ready to go. How do you find consistency if you don't have a relationship developed with these players over many seasons, over many years, over many games? Never mind the fact that Milan is just getting together with all these players, and somehow you got to find that chemistry and that rhythm. Those things don't come from thin air. You have to do it out on the training field. I just don't think that Milan has the time to do so.
Still too much a gap to close on Juventus?
Yeah. Listen, you look at that list, and the one that sticks out is Bonucci. Now, had they signed 8 or 9 players in the position at the level Bonucci's at, then maybe you could start thinking about putting a challenge together. But the fact is, the majority of those players they've signed are not at the level of Bonucci. And for me, they won't be contending.
It's a great starting point.
Yeah.
I think they've put themselves in a conversation.
It's a building block.
It's a great, and then you would say, okay, finish high up the league, put a couple more pieces in the next year, then you got a challenge.
Welcome into the ESPN FC studios for some extra time. Hashtag FC Extra Time. If you want to get us your questions, Casey Keller, Alejandro Moreno, Stevie Nichols, Sebastian Salazar.
I say extra time again.
What did I say?
Has Gab in this?
And Gab Marcotti.
Yes.
Oh, he's on standby again. Gab, you're on standby
I didn't
again,
say
son?
it. I
In
didn't
fact,
say it.
Even forgot you were on standby.
I was gonna. Gab was a
Forgot you were
starter.
on standby.
That was a starter. I was getting through it before I was
Oh, yeah.
so properly interrupted. From Pogba Martial on Twitter. He wants to know if Manchester United.
So properly interrupted, you just said there.
Yeah.
So you were properly interrupted.
Yeah.
You were correct to interrupt you. You agreed?
With the interruption?
Yes.
I don't know. I mean, I kind of
just
come to
said
expect it from this crew.
You said it.
Yeah, you're part of this crew too. Yeah. I know you don't like it sometimes, but
So you don't want to be one of the family?
We're literally. We can't do these extra time things without it just,
Well,
becoming
you started it by
total-
forgetting Gab was here.
I'm going to soldier on. If Manchester United sign both Perisic and Matic, can they compete for the title, Stevie?
Do you know what? To be honest, I think this is more about Lukaku than
About who?
Lukaku. Lukaku.
Lukaku!
Listen, I like Perisic. I think he'll